So the whole green energy transition, it has a massive problem. You see, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, and that makes our power grid pretty unstable. But what if the solution was already parked right in our driveways? That's the huge gamble we're going to look at today, all through the lens of Nuvve's absolutely pivotal year in 2025.
Just think about it for a second. Most electric cars are parked something like 97% of the time. Their massive batteries are just sitting there. This question, it's not some sci-fi fantasy. It's actually the core idea behind a technology that's getting ready to completely reshape our energy world. And that technology is called Vehicle-to-Grid, or V2G. The idea is simple, but honestly, it's profound. Instead of your car only pulling power from the grid to charge up, V2G lets it send power back to the grid when it's needed most. This basically turns every EV into a mobile power source, helping to keep the whole system stable. Now, this is where a company called Nuvve comes into the picture. They're a real pioneer here, and their GIV platform is the brains of the whole operation. It takes thousands of individual electric vehicles and links them together, letting them act as one. And this creates what's called a virtual power plant, a gigantic energy resource with no building and no smokestack. It's pretty genius. So, how does this digital brain really work? Well, it's a four-step dance. First, the platform's AI predicts when the grid is going to be under stress. Then, it automatically jumps into energy markets to sell power at the best possible prices. Next, it tells all those connected EVs to send out their power at the exact right moment. And finally, it handles all the money, reporting the revenue back to everyone. It's this super sophisticated automated balancing act happening 24/7. Okay, so with that background, let's get to the real story here. 2025. For Nuvve, this year was a total high-wire act. I mean, you had these brilliant strategic wins on one side, and on the other, just terrifying financial peril. Strategically, Nuvve made an absolute killer move. In April 2025, they bought out their main competitor, Fermata Energy. This was huge. They basically took a major rival off the board and gobbled up all the key intellectual property in the V2G world. It was a strategic masterstroke. But while this strategy was hitting home runs, the financials were telling a completely different and, frankly, a very scary story. For the full year, Nuvve's revenue didn't grow. It actually shrank by 9.3%. A big service contract fell apart, and suddenly there was this massive gap between their market position and their actual performance. And it gets worse when you look at their cash. By the end of the year, Nuvve had just $5.5 million left in the bank. For a tech company trying to change the world, that is a frighteningly small amount of money, especially when you figure out they were burning through over $16 million a year. And that leads us to the scariest number of all. You do the math, and that cash pile gives them a runway of just 3.9 months. Let me say that again. Less than 4 months of life left before the lights go out, assuming they couldn't find more money. That's not just trouble. That's a full-blown crisis. And hey, you don't have to take my word for it. Things got so bad that their own auditors issued what's called a going concern warning. This is one of the biggest red flags in finance. It's an official statement saying, we have serious doubts this company can even stay in business for another year. So you have to be asking yourself, with finances that terrible, how are they even still in the game? The answer is their competitive moat, the advantages they've built that protect them from rivals, even when they're this close to the edge. The real question is, can that moat be strong enough? This table really lays it all out. You've got the big legacy players, like ChargePoint. They compete on size. They've got chargers everywhere. But they don't have Nuvve's super smart VTG tech. And the other VTG specialists, well, like we just saw, Nuvve bought their biggest rival. Nuvve's edge isn't just about hardware. It's about their patents and, crucially, their regulatory approvals. And this is so important. Getting certified by the people who run the power grid, the transmission system operators, is incredibly hard, and it takes forever. Nuvve has already spent a decade doing that hard work. For any new company trying to compete, that's a 1 to 3 year head start that's almost impossible to catch up to. This regulatory moat is their ace in the hole. So how do we wrap our heads around all this? You've got the brilliant strategy, the scary financials, and this powerful moat? Well, analysts have come up with a really interesting way to describe Nuvve's situation. They're calling Nuvve a call option on the V2G market. Now, in investing, a call option is a small bet you make that has a potentially massive payoff. It means you're not investing in Nuvve's financials today. You're making a huge, high-risk bet that if the V2G market explodes like everyone thinks it will, Nuvve is in the perfect position to capture a massive piece of that pie. And this slide really boils the whole thing down. The bull case is so compelling. They have the best tech, a huge head start with regulators, and this giant untapped market with school buses. But the bear case is just as real, a massive cash crisis and the very real risk that they just run out of time before the plan can work.
So what should we be watching to see how this story plays out? Keep your eyes on three things. First, can they turn their $3.2 million backlog into actual cash revenue? Second, can they hit their goal of getting 500 school buses on their platform? And maybe most importantly, can they get their hands on a $25 million line of credit to solve that cash crisis?
Which really brings us to the final question. Nuvve has the brain of a champion, but the body of a patient in the ICU. Can it get the cash infusion it so desperately needs to survive and go on to become the company that defines the future of our power grid? The answer to that is going to be a huge deal for the entire clean energy transition. For full industry reports, visit www.hdinresearch.com.